Welcome to Attainable Green. I'm Jess, and today we're going to do a species spotlight on the Miltoniopsis roezlii variety xanthina. This is a yellow flowered species that is known to be warm tolerant. I'm going to give some tips on how to grow this plant and some background information about where it grows in the wild. So let's start with the general culture of this plant. This is considered a medium light plant, and it likes to have higher humidity. So the temperature range would be between 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity between 70 to 90%. It likes to have a drop in temperature at night between 5 to 10 degrees. So as long as there is a cooler nighttime period, this plant will do well. And in order to get the correct light level, you want the leaves to kind of have a slight pinkish tinge. If it turns too yellow, then that means that it is too much light. And if it turns very dark green, then it's not getting enough light. During the winter season, it can handle slightly cooler temperatures and less humidity as long as there is good air movement. This plant likes to stay evenly moist, which basically means that it doesn't like to dry out, and it definitely does not like prolonged periods of drought. Depending on where you live, how you take care of this plant may differ. So there is always some variation between what the culture dictates and what you actually do in your environment. Here in Southern California, I get hotter and drier weather than what this plant may see in the wild. So I have to do some adjustments to make sure that this plant will thrive where I live, and I'm going to share with you how I take care of it. So the first thing is I grow this plant strictly indoors, and it gets a temperature range between 50 degrees Fahrenheit up to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And the humidity is around 40 to 60%. In the wintertime, it tends to stay on the cooler side, and in the summertime, it doesn't get as hot as it does outside. Currently, it's growing next to my LED lights, next to my seedlings, so it's not getting bright light, but it's actually doing pretty well. I know that this plant can handle higher light conditions, but it doesn't like the hotter temperatures that come with it. So by using an LED light, I can give it more light without raising the temperature too much. Although this plant likes higher humidity, it seems to be doing well in the current setup. I've noticed a couple of issues due to the lack of humidity, but it's not serious enough that I have to make a specialized setup for it. Currently, this plant is potted up in sphagnum moss, and it seems to enjoy it. The rest of my Miltoniopsis are potted in a variety of media, so I know that they're definitely not picky. As long as there is enough moisture in the pot to keep the roots happy, then that's all that really matters. As for repotting, I haven't repotted this one yet, but I know that the best time to repot would be when the new growth starts and before the new roots fully emerge. You just don't want to damage the new roots as they're coming out, and that's why you want to pick that kind of sweet spot when they're just peeking out. I haven't had too much problem repotting most of my Miltoniopsis as long as there are some healthy, viable roots. If this plant is overwatered, then it tends to struggle more than others, and it's a little bit hard to recover. But so far, as long as you can maintain the health of the plant, then it should be fairly straightforward to repot this plant. If you want to divide it, having 3 to 4 pseudobulbs is best so that the plant has enough energy in its reserves to put out new roots and sustain the plant. Anything smaller is a little bit riskier. It can be done, but it just takes a longer time for it to recover and establish. As for problems with this plant, I haven't had any major issues. The only one is dealing with a little bit of lack of humidity and keeping up with the watering. So some of the things I've noticed is that there's a little bit of wrinkling in the leaves as they're emerging. It creates this kind of accordion pattern if it doesn't get enough water. And the other issue is that when the spike emerges, it gets a little bit stuck in the sheath, so it kind of ends up a little bit bent and wonky, and it doesn't quite straighten out. It does eventually figure it out, but even so, the spike ends up slightly bent. So to remedy that problem, you could either increase the humidity or just kind of mist around that area so that the spike can smoothly glide through the sheaths and without getting stuck. Miltoniopsis are known to be fussy plants, and that is primarily because if the plant isn't in great health to begin with, then it's harder for it to recover. So if you have a healthy plant, there are less problems that would come with it. But if it's starting to have issues, then any other stresses compounded to it will make it harder for it to recover. Some things I noticed about Miltoniopsis is that if it gets overwatered, it can get some root rot. If it gets dried out or dehydrated, it can create the accordion leaves, or some of the roots and the bulbs may shrivel. And also it may be prone to getting a kind of fungal rot or bacterial rot that can take down the plant very fast. In order to combat those things, you just want to make sure you have good culture and not stress the plant out. Another way to cause this plant to deteriorate is by keeping it in temperatures that are too high for it. So if this plant is in an environment that has over 85 degrees for a prolonged period, like several weeks to months, then the plant may slowly start to decline. It definitely likes warm temperatures, but it doesn't like it super hot. So if you can cool it down by maintaining the hydration of the plant, then it can tolerate those higher temperatures for brief periods of time. So that is the general culture about how I take care of this plant in my environment, and so far it's been doing well. I haven't had this plant for a very long time. I've been taking care of Miltoniopsis for about 3 to 4 years now, so I have a good understanding of what to look for and how to observe the plant to make sure that it stays in good health. The Miltoniopsis roezlii is a South American species that's known to be in more hot, humid forests. It's also been found near the coastal mountains of Panama, and it lives in an elevation between 200 to 1,000 meters. This plant doesn't see very hot conditions. It likes the daytime temperatures in the mid-70s to 80s, and then at night it likes to drop in temperature about 5 to 10 degrees. In its native environment, it stays pretty wet and humid year-round, so the roots are almost constantly moist, and it always has a nice clean flush of water. This plant tends to flower whenever the pseudobulb matures, and that tends to be in the spring to summer season. Sometimes it can also bloom during the fall season as well. Typically, this plant can get 2 to 3 flowers per spike, and it's known to have kind of the shorter, smaller spikes than other Miltoniopsis. If you compare this species to a hybrid, you may notice that the hybrid is a lot bigger of a plant. It has larger flowers and more flowers. So this particular plant is a lot smaller and more compact. And that is one of the reasons why I enjoy growing Miltoniopsis species, is because they take up a little less space. And I think just understanding the species helps me grow the hybrids a lot better. This species is used in hybridizing primarily to give it more warmth tolerance and to impart that kind of yellow color onto the flowers. The flowers tend to have a light citrusy or rosy scent, and I find the scent to be quite pleasant. This is my second Miltoniopsis species that I am able to rebloom, and I think that's because I've picked more warm tolerant species to acquire. The other one is the Miltoniopsis xanthina, which is known for its white flowers. So that is a quick overview of the Miltoniopsis roezlii variety xanthina, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about this orchid. I think it's really cool, and I wish it would be in more collections. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more about Miltoniopsis, please click on the playlist, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!